Welcome back to Global LGBTI Politics. In the last episode, I looked at what I thought were some of the key issues and events that the LGBTI community has faced worldwide in the last year. I'm sure I didn't get everything right, and I'm sure there's things that you might have thought could have been in that weren't included in there. In this episode, we're going to look at what I think, if you were, the top 5 issues that came out in the last year. So there may be some debate at the end about whether I've captured everything, but let me know what you think. And number 5 is something that many of you may not have heard of. In mid-July in Montevideo in Uruguay, there was a global LGBTI conference which brought together lots of governments that put funding in towards international LGBTI rights, and philanthropic organisations and those organisations that give grants out to local activist groups. And it was kind of the biggest meeting of its kind to try and pull together people and look to ways to ensure that there is a consistency in the sort of funding that's been put in place, that we aren't replicating giving money over twice, so the work that LGBTI organisations that receive donor funding can be more efficient and more improved, and we can also look at ways to support those organisations better. Also, which is really important, is that LGBTI funding tends to go to gay men. But actually, research recently has shown that transgender people and intersex people get a mere fraction of the overall pot. And that's been kind of highlighted as a key issue that needs to be addressed. So the conference brought together, if you like, a lot of the key players in one place, and what they've agreed out of it is a joint platform by which they're going to try and address a lot of these issues and really improve the quality and hopefully the amount of funding that's going into LGBTI community support across the globe. And number 4 is the agreement of the SDGs. What are SDGs? They are the Sustainable Development Goals that the 193 countries have agreed through the UN, a platform of 17 different measures by which they want to end poverty by 2030. Now, with all the toing and froing at the UN, of course, getting sexual orientation in there was impossible, unfortunately. So a lot of the ability for us to use these Sustainable Development Goals to kind of guide LGBTI equality in the future will be using phrases like leaving nobody left behind, and ensuring that no person is discriminated on the basis of this or that. So although we still have a lot of countries in the UN blocking LGBTI equality, we now have a framework in which there are entry points by which we can engage with it. And if you're particularly interested in that, my colleague Beth Mills wrote a paper on, if you like, the spots in the SDGs where you might want to engage in it. I'll put a link in on this as well. At number 3, you'll have to excuse me as a British person, we're going to talk about Brexit. So Brexit is something I've covered previously on Global LGBTI Politics. I'll put a link down there if you want to have a look at what I've said about it. But basically, as well as all the kind of nationalist fervour and polarisation of online debate that's happened as a result of nearly a 50-50 split in the UK between Remainers and Leavers, what has also happened is we've seen research that in the 3 months after the UK voted to leave the European Union, there was a 147% increase in LGBT attacks reported, which kind of fits in with a lot of the attacks that people from ethnic minorities or Eastern European people living in the UK have faced as well. On top of that, why do I think it's another kind of crucial issue? One of the great things about the European Union has been that kind of progressive causes in one country filter through in those kind of linked relationships we have through the European Parliament, but also through the free movement of people amongst countries. So I've read an interesting book that shows how the situation in neighbouring Germany with Poland, the kind of intermingling of activisms has kind of contributed well on both sides. So there's a real loss, I think, from using the UK and UK's voice within Europe, and also having the kind of debates and closeness politically with European partners that we've had in the past for those of us in the UK too. At the number 2 spot is the appointment by the UN Human Rights Council of a special rapporteur on the rights of LGBTI people. In this case, a gentleman called Vitit Muntaborn, who's from Thailand, who is taking over a 3-year mandate to, if you like, hold the 193 UN countries to account for their treatment and discrimination against LGBTI people. It's been a closely fought fight. And once it was announced we were going to have it, there was a huge backlash by Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries against the kind of push for this. But we won. 23 countries voted in favour, 18 against, and 6 countries abstained. And what's really promising about it is that the impetus for this largely came from Latin American countries. It wasn't, if you like, the usual North American and European pushing for this issue, but actually there's a lot of take-up of this issue and pushing it forward by Latin American countries. So it's very promising. It's not perfect. Countries will be able to, and probably will, ignore recommendations that hold it as discriminatory, but at the same time this allows us to put a spotlight on LGBTI discrimination globally, and the individuals who are these special rapporteurs on human rights tend to have, if you like, a big bully pulpit by which to speak. So it's not perfect, it's within the UN system with all the compromises that includes, but I think it's yet another, if you like, weapon in the arsenal of ensuring that we're putting LGBTI human rights at the top of the list. Okay, at the number 1 position, I really didn't want it to be Donald Trump, but it is Donald Trump. I think the election by the US of Donald Trump, although very close, is going to herald a huge sea change in the way that we see a lot of politics. What's troubling, I think, internationally for that is that the way that Trump deals with things like NATO or the EU or the UN, or the contempt in which he holds these things and sees it all as deal making, means that he's going to cut out a lot of the key international fora that we work within. That may also impact on the US's ability to give international aid to countries that need it, and therefore the support for LGBTI communities. So I think on every level it's problematic across the board, and here's the key point, is that journalistic integrity, trade unions, women's rights, sexual and reproductive health rights, LGBTI rights, anti-racism, Black Lives Matter, all of these kind of communities and these kind of progressive sets of values that those people hold are under threat. This, more than any time, is when we need intersectional activism. So I guess for the next year, I'm arguing that you need to commit yourself and see the connections between, if you're interested in LGBTI politics, then what do you have in common with people fighting for the right for safe abortion, or for women's rights, or for Black Lives Matters, or for free speech issues on the internet. These are all interlinked and will become even more under threat in the next year. So not the best way to end the top 10 issues, but I think it's a call for arms. On that note, I'll be doing, if you like, a looking forward to 2017 episode in the next week or two, so please keep an eye out for that one, where I'll try and see what I think some of the particular issues are that we should be looking at next year. Alright, have a great new year everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.